Hello, everyone. My name is Gitika Gorfi, and today I'm very, very honored and excited to be interviewing a very special space champion, Dr. Jeff Myers. I met Dr. Myers at the AsMA 2023 conference and was immediately blown away with all of the amazing experiences he's had in the space industry and more specifically in aerospace. Dr. Myers is an aerospace physician who works at the Kennedy Space Center, where he's supporting the launches to the International Space Station and the planned Artemis Lunar exploration programs. When first starting his career, Dr. Myers started off as a flight surgeon at the Kennedy Space Center until the conclusion of the Space Shuttle program for a little more than 20 years. Afterwards, he took a break from the Kennedy Space Center, but continued to teach spaceflight physiology courses for the engineers who worked in the space program while also holding other aerospace medicine roles. More specifically, he served as the medical director for the US medical program, where he coordinated the medical care for those natives who had been accidentally exposed to the fallout radiation from the early nuclear testing program in the South Pacific. Dr. Myers has some incredible experiences in this industry, and he's seen the evolution of space medicine kind of from its early stages. So I'm very excited to learn about Dr. Myers' career journey, as well as what led him into space medicine. So welcome. Thank you so much for taking your time to inspire the next generation. I'm very excited to speak with you today, Dr. Myers.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, to go ahead and kick off our conversation, I wanted to start off by asking about your typical day. I usually know that, especially for physicians, there's never a typical day. But how do you generally like to structure,
Yes.
a typical day for yourself?
Well, it's really a great field to be working in aerospace medicine because you get to combine traditional medicine, clinical medicine, which we're used to as a physician working in, such as in a clinic environment, taking care of patients and their injuries, those sorts of things. But we also do some of the other aspects that are a little uh, different from routine medicine. You know, we're trying to protect people in a potentially very dangerous environment, going into space, riding on rockets, and so forth. So that's part of what we do. We sit on attend as the Health and Medical Technical Authority on meetings uh, as they're processing the vehicles and heading toward launch. There are these meetings and different milestones where they look at different systems, and they need the health and medical technical authority representative there in order to determine that that's really going to be safe for the crew and look out for the crew's best interest on that voyage. So that's one of the things we do, but we also take care of the workers working on the rocket in case they would have an injury, and we do the medical certifications so that they can uh, be safe to work in those hazardous environments of putting the rocket together and launching it. Or,
Yeah, that's amazing. And what's really something that I really love about this field is you get to work in this completely different environment. So we're not just trying to protect humans while they're on Earth, but post flight, during flight, as well as when working with all these hazardous materials when we're preparing to go to space. So I think it's incredible. And a lot of times I hear whenever I talk about my interest in space medicine, a lot of folks are like, oh, that's such a niche career because you're only helping astronauts and you're only helping a few select
yeah,
individuals. So, why is space medicine, in your viewpoint, an important career that not only helps astronauts, but could potentially implicate other lives and help a larger and broader population here on Earth? Why is space medicine an important subject for students to consider going into?
I think it really is a very good question. But it's one that I think most of us can relate to. Um, we know that we're on this fragile Earth. We know that things could happen, with the planet. Things could happen to us. We're trying in our efforts in space to reduce those risks and to do something about it. For instance, we had a mission last year where we went out to an asteroid and shoved it a little bit to change the orbit. It was actually an asteroid revolving around another asteroid. Um, and that worked very well. We demonstrated we actually could change the path of an asteroid. So, we actually could do that um, in one of these scenarios where an asteroid was actually headed toward the Earth, depending on what orbit it was coming from and the speed and so forth. And we're developing that technology. So that's kind of a basic uh, example. But it's true that no matter how well we take care of the Earth and these other things that we can do, there will come a time when our solar system will evolve through its lifespan, and the sun will be affected by this, first by expanding and then by contracting. And the Earth is not even likely to survive the first part of that with the expansion of the photosphere of the sun. It would likely be engulfed. So even though that's millions of years into the future, we really need to work upon exploring around our planet, finding other places that we can live and work, because eventually that's what we have to do. So that's really the whole purpose. Well, that's a very solid and good purpose for going into space. But there's even more. As we work together uh, against things that are bigger than we are, threats that are to the entire planet or the species, um, it comes we come into a better focus. We prioritize and we look beyond our differences, from one country to the next. It seems as though we've been able to get along very well in space. We have friends in space that we sometimes are almost at war with down on Earth. But we realize up there we really need each other to survive. So I call that kind of the Star Trek effect, and everybody knows, probably listening to this, what Star Trek is. They know the history of all that. There are all these different people, and not only just from different races or different countries, they're from different worlds, which takes it to the next level, of course. But um, it shows that, and in many of the episodes, they'll find that they have to work with their sworn enemies in order to, be able to save the world, save the universe, and so forth. And I think that's kind of what we really do. We see that we have to do that when we're in space. So it teaches us to put those differences aside, and that there's really a better way, and that we need each other uh, to accomplish the goals of the elevation of our civilization, of humankind, and making good progress.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the points that you really mentioned that I think stuck out to me that I've honestly not really put that much emphasis in is like imagining space medicine as a tool to developing this knowledge base, developing solutions as we kind of continue evolving as a society. There are going to be challenges, there are going to be problems,
Yeah.
and by advancing our understanding of medicine, understanding of emergency medicine, and medicine in extreme environments, we can better protect ourselves in the future. So it's almost like building a little toolkit using space medicine. And another, I love to think of space as this innovative space, innovative industry that enables us to answer challenging problems that we otherwise would not care to answer until the problem faced us. So I think space just kind of gives us that, nice environment, created space to really push ourselves and push our knowledge. So yeah, definitely, I'm a
Yeah,
huge fan of
absolutely.
space medicine. So definitely agree with you.
All right.
Yeah, and my next question for you is related to some of your experiences. I know as I was reading your introduction, you've been a part of the Kennedy Space Center, you've worked with various different space companies as a physician. So, what has been the most exciting research project or project, doesn't have to be research based, just the most exciting thing you've been a part of or worked on? I'm curious to dive a little bit deeper into some of your experiences.
Well, I think the one, uh, if I can use a pun, near and dear to my heart and to everybody's heart, um, is work that we did early on with defibrillators. And you in your lifetime, we've had defibrillators always on an airplane, when you're flying up there. But in my early days, this wasn't so. And people had little chance of survival if they had a heart attack up on the airplane. It's just not enough time to land it, circle around, and then get the doctor on board. I mean, you could do CPR, but the thing that really in a cardiac arrest helps to improve survival is early defibrillation. So this is that electrical device, that we put on the chest, and we can shock the person back into a good rhythm if a shock is indicated. So there was a day when we didn't have these there. Now you see them everywhere in the shopping mall, in restaurants, and throughout the airport, and of course on the airplane. So um, I think that was revolutionary, and that's
Very.
what part of what medicine does, and that was really that's brought to you by aerospace medicine, space medicine, really, because we were realizing that at some point we wanted to take people that were older, into space, or we might have people with other medical conditions where they might have a cardiac arrest, and we would need this device. Certainly, we knew we needed it in our medevac helicopters, and they were available in some helicopters starting to, at that point, but we needed to experiment with them more to determine that the electrical discharge would not have an adverse effect on the flight of the plane or the communications or the navigation and that sort of thing. And so we did some of that early experimentation at the Kennedy Space Center.
Wow.
I was happy to be able to do that. I did it with some of my Air Force colleagues. Then Major David McKennis, he went on to be the medical director for American Airlines. And American Airlines was the first. He took that further step and introduced these defibrillators onto the commercial airline. And American actually
Wow.
was the first one to do that. Um, and then the others came right along, and realized this was a good thing, and it became part of. I think there were some laws passed, that they wanted to extend this and promote this more favorably. So that was one uh, research project that uh, I think did a huge amount of good, and it helped us to advance medicine. And
Yeah,
was happy to have a very small, part in that. There were many people working on this.
that is absolutely incredible. I feel like just hearing you talk about it and, most importantly, seeing a direct application of this space medicine research that you had a chance to play a role in come to life and to help millions of people. It's now used everywhere. To see that, come to life and see that vision you were talking about become a reality and seeing that application benefiting so many individuals, it's so gratifying. And I think that's what makes space medicine and medicine in general a very exciting career path and a career choice. So, I didn't actually know you were part of that project before. So just to hear the role that you played, even if it was a small out of a large group, I think that's still so powerful. So, that's incredible. It's amazing. I didn't actually know it stemmed from aerospace medicine either. So I guess I learned something new. Yeah.
Well, lots of people in lots of places, were doing this type of project, and uh, but Dr. McCannis really got it, going. And I was so happy that I'd been able to work with him, in sort of laying some of the groundwork, some of the initial data that he really needed to take that forward. And when he left the Air Force, like I said, he went into the private sector. And it's one of the best things that I think aerospace medicine has done. So I'm very happy for that.
Amazing. I feel like this definitely needs to be talked more about in schools. I feel like space medicine is still not a very popular career choice. Or even when I tell my counselors or, guidance counselors, like, oh, I'm interested in space medicine, they always kind of give me like a questioning look of, oh, is that a real career choice? And I feel like it needs to be brought out more because we can clearly see how it can be such a incredibly important career choice that can benefit and change so many lives, just as your research projects did as well for so many. So I feel like space medicine is still a somewhat hard and challenging career choice to pursue. So, what advice would you have for students in terms of how do they become these aerospace professionals, aerospace physician professionals? Do they have
Yeah.
to become a flight surgeon? Are there multiple ways to do this? Is there one path? Kind of what's your advice and take on this, very still new, novel career choice?
Well, there is a writing, an ancient writing, that there are many pathways to the truth. And I think there are many pathways to success in aerospace medicine, and many pathways have been successfully taken. In the beginning, there wasn't a career path for it. And the first flight surgeons were all other kinds of doctors who learned and created, helped to advance the specialty uh, by giving their own perspectives. Cardiologists, ear, nose, throat specialists,
Right.
neurologists, emergency physicians, people in all different uh, types of other specialties of medicine. And we still have that today, and we still will have it in the future. Um, I was fortunate enough to be able to have training in a residency that did aerospace medicine.
Oh,
And and there still are some today, and they're becoming more. The main one now is at University of Texas medical
yeah.
branch at Galveston, of course, and it's well known. But there are others. There's one with Mayo Clinic, and there are fellowships as well. And some other countries also have some training in that. There's a very nice one at King's College in London, um, in the UK, and they have a special degree even for it there, a doctor of aviation medicine. So all around the world, and through the country, there are programs to formalize the training. And uh, most experts will say you should have some training as a regular doctor as part of that to learn how to treat patients and so forth with all kinds of medical conditions. And then you learn the further aspects of medicine in space. And the military training programs do that. So that's another way. If you're a person that's really thrilled by that kind of adventure and protecting, the people all over the planet, actually, now they go and they try to help keep them protected from the bad guys. Um, it's that role is evolving, as well. It's not exactly the way it used to be, but there are civilian opportunities for training, as I've mentioned. So there are different types of flight surgeons. There's Army, Navy, there's Air Force, of course, and there are civilian. And you don't necessarily have to do a specific uh, residency training program lasting years in order to function as in aerospace medicine. And there are groups, especially in emergency medicine, who are looking to develop shorter training programs, for people who may not, be having a full-time job in aerospace medicine, but they want to help. They might provide some support at the recovery site and that sort of thing. So what we're seeing now is an explosion in the opportunities that are out there for people who are interested in having some training in aerospace medicine. And I think there's a place for all of them. I really, I do. So it just depends on what you're looking for in terms of your career and what kinds of things you'd like to do.
I think that was perfectly said. I love to think that space is an incredibly interdisciplinary industry. So, especially in medicine, too, there's so many different aspects too. You can pick different specialties and you can combine it with aerospace. There is definitely some cause, some need, some required that needs to be solved. Actually, before the summer, I had very little background in nephrology or the kidney, but this summer I'm actually doing an internship on nephrology at Harvard Medical School, and I have no background in kidney. And I discovered that there's actually kidney stone problems in space for a lot of astronauts.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
and it's interesting to see. I was like, oh, you could be a nephrologist who's studying kidneys in space, and I've never even thought of that. And just seeing, I've actually met one professor here, and he was saying he dabbled a little bit with space medicine and nephrology a few years
yes,
back, and he was a part of AsMA as well. And just hearing how there is a community everywhere, even from nephrology to neurology, emergency medicine, and all of these different specialties, I think it's so exciting to be like, hey, you don't have to just know the whole body. You can pick something you're passionate about in medicine. And if you're excited about space, you can combine it together because there's definitely a problem that needs to be solved or some knowledge gap that needs to be bridged. So
yes.
I think that was definitely, I think it's so important to remember that you can pick your own, destination. There's not like one path you have to follow.
Right. There's definitely a lot of different needs,
Yes.
you
Yeah,
know.
exactly. And,
I mean, there'll always be the
mhm,
specialty, that at the core, if you want to
right.
put that time in and have that board certification. But we need help from a lot of other disciplines, and I think it's good for them to have some kind of additional training as well. So I think there are all kinds of options for involvement.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And hearing about your own work in space medicine and when I met you at the conference and just hearing how long you've been a part of AsMA and the work you've been doing, I was really excited to learn about your own journey into discovering space medicine, especially because I feel like you're one of the first flight surgeons, one of the first people in this field. And so, kind of navigating, tracking this industry, what was your aha moment that got you excited about space and eventually
Yeah.
discovering space medicine?
Well, when I was very young, like 4 or 5 years old, um, I think it really occurred to me, that there was a lot more out there than just the Earth, and the Earth was big enough. But especially at night, on a clear night, you'd look up and see all the stars. And it was, I was very fortunate, that I was really in a nurtured environment. My parents saw I had all this interest and they got me books, even though I couldn't really read them yet, to look at the diagrams, of stars and planets, what we knew at that time, what we'd done in terms of the book. It was some kind of encyclopedia, and it had in it all the records of how high people had flown on different aircraft, and how all the astronauts had done to that time. And there weren't many at that time. Actually, I'm very much a child of the space age, having been born literally only a few months before Sputnik. So
Oh,
I'm actually one of
yeah.
the old people that was alive before there was any man-made object in space. And it's hard for me to
Wow.
really grasp what I've seen in my lifetime, but um, it brought me along, and those were kind of all my aha moments every time we would
Yeah.
accomplish something. And I dreamed as a child of being involved in this.
Yeah.
And so, really, it's a dream come true for me. I sort of have to stop and pinch myself, make sure that I'm actually awake and actually doing this.
Right.
I hope that that will be the same for all of you who would really like to experience that. I hope you'll have a similar experience. And I'm sure the things that you're going to see
Yeah.
would boggle our minds. I think
Yeah.
Shakespeare wrote it very well. Even 400 years ago, when he wrote, I think in Hamlet, there are things in heaven and earth that have not yet even been imagined in our philosophies.
Yeah. The industry is growing so rapidly, even with, just the commercialization in space and the idea of point to point travel and, like I said, replacing airplanes completely, and the crazy ideas which seemingly are crazy now but not so crazy in the next 10, 15, 20 years. I think it's amazing how we're planning on sending humans to Mars. We're preparing for that, and just all of these, I probably can't even imagine what's going to happen within my own lifetime. So I actually didn't know that you observed really from the beginning of the space industry really growing, not only in the government wise, but also commercially. I'm curious to now hear about your experience. Like, how was it like growing through, the rapid growth? I know there was like a pause in between. I feel like space was kind of stagnant at a point of time. I mean,
Yeah,
what was the, space growth like, from your point of view? And what do you like kind of think about the future of space as well? I mean, the
right.
next 20, 30 years, what do you think will happen?
We're on the threshold, I think, of a golden era of expansion into space travel. Um, the things I see, I'm really quite thrilled and excited about. Things we never dreamed would be possible. In the days when I had applied actually to the program, there are all these medical tests and so forth. And it was only
Yeah.
just a few people that might pass all those and actually be selected. And they're looking for a certain kind of individual. But now the possibilities are really expanding. And we see that our job is more important than ever as a space medicine specialist because now our job is to try to help all these people be able to get to space
Right.
and to, and we need them all really. We need everybody in this endeavor. If we're going to be successful, truly successful, we really have to bring everyone along. And so um, we're looking at people with different medical conditions that couldn't have gone into space before, people of an age that you wouldn't have dreamed could be launched into space. It's happening for them, and some of the commercial providers. So
Mhm.
that's one of the really wonderful things that I see happening. And people may call it tourism, space tourism, or something like that, but it really is cutting edge. The work that has been done to allow it so far, the kind of testing, the proofing, as it were, to show that we can safely send people into space with cardiac conditions,
Right.
with other kinds of medical conditions that previously would have been disqualifying.
Yeah.
Um, and just seeing that all come together, it's a dream for an aerospace medicine specialist, really.
Yeah.
We really are thrilled to be part of it. So that's where I see, the future is eventually. Uh, the goal is we need to go to other planets, but
Right.
we have to take ourselves, right?
Yeah.
We can't be leaving people behind. Uh, we have to have that capability. So that's all part of the technology, and that technology uh, provides advancements, for us here on Earth as we plan and develop these things as well.
Definitely, yeah, and that's what's exciting is we don't know how telemedicine and AI will continue to play a role in medicine and
Right.
grow in ways we can't even imagine right now as we all contribute
Right.
from our own personal skill sets into the space sector. So, yeah, telemedicine is another very exciting topic that I know, we have lots to say about. But in this journey that you've had so far, did you have any obstacles? I know you kind of touched on one point of, it's hard to become an astronaut, but just in career wise,
Yeah.
did you have any obstacles? I think it's so easy to look at like someone like yours career and be like, oh, everything was easy for them. They just became super accomplished. But I know the journey behind that required a lot of hard work for you. So, did you have any obstacles? And if so, more importantly, how did you overcome them?
So really, my obstacle wasn't really an obstacle. It's something I really enjoyed. What was, growing up in a rural place. For me, I really loved that. Being close to nature and so forth, and just out in being able to walk out into the woods and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there are stereotypes with different uh, areas and with different people. And you think of you might call it the country bumpkin, we used to call it. And this is a person that, there's a stereotype that, well, they may not know so much, but it's not really true, of course. It's just another stereotype to be debunked. And I can remember going to the university and sitting and taking the entrance exams and so forth. And I looked at my scores, and I came into one professor, I think the chemistry professor, and he's like, Pike County, where is that? What kind of chemistry book did you read? And I'm like, well, and then I named off, and he's like, oh, that's the right one. Yeah, that's a good one. And um, I think you have to prove yourself every day, no matter who you are. Anyway, that's kind of my philosophy. You have to demonstrate a consistent performance, and you shouldn't be afraid of that. You should put the work in and just do it. And that's the best way to break down these barriers. People will see, no matter, what color you are, or what color your eyes are, or your hair, or maybe you've got a little bit of an accent, when you talk,
Right,
because of the particular part of the
right.
country you come from, or even from whichever country. Um, but you can speak a universal language, you know, um, which is the language of helping, and being productive, being helpful to your fellow humans, and um, you'll break down those stereotypes, and people will see you for who you are, and you'll be able to make a contribution, and they'll be glad to have it. So it's my advice
That
for that.
is Yeah, that's sincerely one of the best pieces of advice I've probably ever heard because I think it's, we all have our own differences because that's what makes us human. We're all come from different experiences, different backgrounds, different, interests, and I think that's what makes us unique. And sometimes, I mean, there's always going to be someone who's going to judge you for something that's different about you. So I think,
Right.
realizing that, you've got to constantly prove until you get something, and even after you achieve something, you got to constantly keep pushing and keep proving yourself and keep achieving what you want to achieve, and don't let like all those negative comments get to you because someone's going to judge you along the way and you just have to keep proving them wrong and keep doing what you believe is true. So I really will take that advice to heart because I think a lot of people can connect with that regardless of wherever they are in the world, because I know there's always someone doubting you and it's just a matter of believing in yourself and realizing you're going to have to
Right. Right.
prove it to everyone anyway. Yeah.
Yep.
And
Believe in
now that
yourself.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And now that we're able to learn about your journey as well as what got you into this industry, as well as some of the advice you have. I know you just gave a piece of advice, but usually I love to kind of end off my interview with this one
Mm.
question of, what final piece of advice do you have for young students, so maybe high school, college students, even young professionals? What's like a piece of advice you wish you were knew when you were their age, about entering in a career in STEM, aerospace, or
Yeah.
really just any piece of advice, something that you wish you could tell the younger self, of you. What was the advice be if you could go back in time and give your younger self, a piece of advice?
Well, I was quite fortunate in that I had always had good advice, from my teachers, and mentors, and but not everybody gets good advice. And in talking to the students, that come for the competitions and so forth, that
Yeah.
I'm privileged to meet. Um, some of them actually have received frightful advice, like, "Oh, give up on that.
Oh
Don't
wow.
pursue that. That's crazy to study that. You know, um, go where your heart is. You're going to be the happiest when you do that." I mean, of course, I always, if you ask me just for basic advice, I'm always like, well, do the math. Do study the physics.
Right.
And the chemistry, the things that are tough, that's what it's going to really help you with in the engineering,
Yeah.
and that'll set you apart. and it's true. It's true. But no one listening to this is going to have trouble with those things. That's natural for us. But what we have to focus on, in addition, is not to be discouraged by negative opinions or naysayers. We have to look. Uh, we have to go where our heart is. We have to follow our passion, and we can be practical at the same time. But if you have a dream, well, I should say, and this is one of my favorite sayings, uh, that sometimes I close some of the ceremonies, the award ceremonies with. Uh, if you want to do more than just exist, you have to have a dream. And you need to be true to yourself and true to that dream. So follow that dream.
Incredible advice to like wrap up this interview. It's a great way to, everybody grows up with a dream, but so many people drop it off somewhere in their journey because they're too scared, or someone's telling them it's too difficult, or
Yeah,
it's not for them, or they don't see anybody around them doing that career. I don't know anybody in space medicine. Neither of my parents are in space or medicine, actually. So it's like this is completely new. But even though people have told me it's a very difficult career choice, I think just remembering, regardless of whatever you're interested in, if you
yeah,
love something, create those opportunities for yourself. And it is possible. You can do it. So many others have done it. So I think just kind of having that self-confidence and believing yourself is already half the battle. So I think just
right.
following that dream is so
And
important because you will get there. Yeah.
the dream, you can have small parts of the dream and still
Right.
have the dream and gain the dream.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
you might have to be flexible, but don't give up, until
Exactly.
you find your dream.
Exactly. And your dreams can constantly change. It doesn't have to stay consistent your whole life.
Right.
So evolves as you go. So I think that's really incredible advice. Honestly, I feel like I know you so much better than our, a 10-minute conversation at AsMA. So really thank you so much,
You're
Dr.
welcome.
Myers, for doing this and taking your time. I know I will definitely 100% take the advice you said today to heart. And I'm sure everybody else who's listening up to this point will as well. So thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome.